Music is part of everyone's life, but for some, it is more than that. It is life. Our guest today has been a music instructor and pianist for over 3 decades and chair of Madonna's music department for over 20 years. She's an advocate of healthy playing and of the balance between the body and interpretation. A Grammy educator nominee, I should say, Linette Popoff-Parks joins us in the studio today. Welcome to Celebrate Michigan, the show produced on the campus of Madonna University. I'm Chris Benson. Linette has decades of experience on her shoulder, but I know that wasn't always the way she started. Let's hear how she did start. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Chris. Thank you, and thanks to the crew, too, for everything that they've been doing. I have a 94-year-old mom who was a piano teacher and was obviously playing the piano and teaching when I was really small. And I must have started noodling around at the piano, and so when I was 4, she decided to give me lessons. And then a year later, she thought, okay, I think she's serious about this, so she had me start taking lessons with her teacher. And the first lesson that I had with her, I was excruciatingly shy. So I wouldn't play while she was in the room.
Oh, wow.
So she had to go into the dining room, and I would play my little song, and then she came in a little bit closer. She said, "Is it okay if I'm here?" And so eventually I got comfortable enough with her to be next to me. But yeah, that was my first official piano lesson.
And at such a young age.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So it sounds like music is something that's really been a part of your life from very early on, and every early memory, I imagine.
Yeah, it is. I can't remember a time where I wasn't playing or wasn't listening to music. We had, back in the day, we called them LPs, but vinyls all over, and lots of books to read and listen to music. And yeah, it was in the house.
So it started from a young age, had a strong maternal influence, let's say.
Right.
How did it go from there to teaching?
It was a long road, actually,
Yeah.
and there are a lot of detours on the way, or maybe I'd like to say different paths that I took, because when I went to college, I wanted to study music therapy, and so that was my first love. And when I entered Marygroves, where I went to college, it was at a time where the program was suffering, and so they closed it, and not the department, the program. And so then I decided, okay, well, I'll be a music education major. And then a couple of years later, I found out, well, I don't really, I'm not really cut out for that, for teaching, K-12. So then I decided to study theory and piano, and then that's what I did in graduate school. And then the president of Madonna University at the time was Sister Franceline, who was also my high school music teacher.
Oh, wow.
And she called me and asked me if I would be interested in playing for Madonna's choir. And so then I, kind of got my foot in the door, and then a year later, would you like to teach some theory? And then a few years later, there was enough for me to teach full time, and so I interviewed for that, and so that's how I got to Madonna, teaching piano and theory.
And it sounds like you said there were some, you took the scenic route at times, but I hear a thread that goes throughout your story, which is strong female mentors, that really guided you along the way.
Yeah, so that was my mom first, and then Mrs. Lechner, who was my first piano teacher after my mom. And I have to say that Sister Franceline was probably the biggest influence because she gave me challenges as a pianist and reading music that I didn't even know were possible. And, sometimes I'd sit in the corner and fret that, I can't do this. And she said, yes, you can. And so what that meant was that she was giving me music where I was reading the soprano line, the alto line, et cetera, and the piano part, which sounds kind of technical. But basically, I was playing the music for the high singers, the low singers, and the piano part at the same time. So that was a skill that I learned how to do when I was in high school. And
I actually love that you explain the technical part, because as a non-musician myself, or someone who hasn't practiced or dabbled in that,
yeah.
I'm a great appreciator. I mean, I love music. I love listening to music. I think it does something to the soul. It speaks to me. But when you explain that it's not just sitting down and banging away at the keys, that there's so much involved in it.
Yeah.
Do you find when you give lessons that you see that, like, your students realize, like, oh, it is more than just the rote playing of the notes?
Oh, definitely. And there's actually two areas to that. One is when I teach humanities, which is a interdisciplinary course. The majority of students in the class have never had any music before. So it's, starting from the very beginning, and we have fun games and stuff like that. But it always has to move into, what does music mean to me? I mean, what is it doing to me? And what kind of emotional effects is it having on me? And so the same thing I try to bring out in my students, that when you're learning technically how to move correctly, which of course is really important because you want to be able to play and play what you want to play, but ultimately it's like, what's going on? What's the character of this piece? And I have a list, like 1,000 words of that I call my list of feeling words. So we go through that, say, so when you're listening to this, or when I play it for you, you play it, what do you feel? Mm-hmm. And what do we want to go? And then what do we find in the music that can make it sound dancey or silly or angry or frightening? And, so it's that kind of thing that I think is really important to touch personally, because if it doesn't touch you, what's it for?
Oh, very powerful. And when you were speaking, it brought to mind movies and big emotional scenes in movies, and how we may not even realize that the music behind it is what's really helping us feel that feeling.
Yeah, that's
and it sounds like
absolutely
you
true.
get to translate that for students as well.
I do my best.
Well, and I think, you mentioned like a music appreciation and humanities courses. It's amazing how rich music can be when you take the time to understand what's part of it and how to listen to it in addition to playing it.
Right. That also deepens the experience. I always liken it to watching football for the first time, and it's not one of my favorite sports, but if I don't know what's going on, then it's really not terribly interesting. But when someone points out, oh, here are the strategies, and this is why this guy is looking so happy now, and this is why they're going to kick the ball. When you understand, the components of what goes into it, then you can enjoy it more at a deeper level. And it's the same thing with music. If you start to understand, okay, what's loud, what's soft, and what kind of instruments are being used, and
it means so much more.
It does.
Oh. Well, we've already come to a break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back talking more with Linette Popoff-Parks and the beautiful music she creates and inspires. Stay tuned.
Kickflip 6 stairs takes determination. So will getting into college. I've got what it takes. So do you.
So, are you going out tonight?
I can't. My parents say I have to be home right after work.
That's so gay.
Totally gay.
Ugh, that is so Emma and Julia.
Why are you saying that's so Emma and Julia?
Well, when something is dumb or stupid, you say that's so Emma and Julia.
Who says that?
Everyone.
Imagine if who you are were used as an insult. When you say that's so gay, do you realize what you say? Knock it off.
Marie, you have prediabetes.
Prediabetes? I don't have time to eat right or exercise. I'm a busy mom.
Oh, you're a busy mom.
Yeah.
This is great news. Busy moms never get prediabetes.
Wait, what?
Let me just... Yeah, this is all the people at risk for prediabetes, and way over here, busy moms. No?
Whew. What to expect when you're expecting.
Like here?
a teenager.
Today, I'm going to show you how to teen-proof your home. First step, hide the car keys, preferably somewhere they would never look. Challenges will come up. Be ready for them. Hi, honey.
Ready for the... Mom, you don't use mannequins in the mannequin challenge.
You don't have to know it all to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same.
Welcome back to Celebrate Michigan. I'm Chris Benson, and I have the pleasure of interviewing today Linette Popoff-Parks. She's a professor of music and piano here at Madonna University, but her reach has gone well beyond the bounds of this campus as well. So glad to have you today, and want to talk about a somewhat more serious topic, even though what we were talking about was quite serious, but the pandemic. We're still kind of working through this COVID crisis or issue. How did that affect what you do as a musician, as a professor, and someone who teaches?
Oh, wow.
I know, we don't have enough time.
I know. We had pretty much 48 hours to figure out what we're going to do from going on campus to off campus. And fortunately, there were musicians all over the world that got this Zoom group together, and what they were able to do is to share information about how to set up your computer with the correct angle. For me, of course, it was to a piano, so that's one thing I learned, and different types of microphones and where I set the microphone up so the student could hear me as I was talking to him or her on the screen, and then also demonstrating at the piano. And then another thing that we added was an overhead cam. So we got a tripod. My husband helped me do all this. And then I used my iPhone, and there's a really good app for that. And then what it does is shows my hands from the top of the keyboard, so that when a student is trying to figure out, okay, so do I move towards the black keys or do I move over to the right or to the left, they can see that much better than if they're just seeing the computer angle from the side.
How amazing.
Yeah, and if it weren't for this group, this support group that I call, my international support group, I don't think that I would have been able to manage, to create at least what I thought was a well-functioning situation for my piano students. So they were all pretty cooperative, and I think glad just to have somebody to talk to, because I'm there, right? And it's just like you and me, you're talking to a person, and I'm listening to them. And sometimes part of the lesson was I'm having a really rough time, or I'm scared, because as we talked earlier, the emotional aspect of the person is an integral part of being a musician, and obviously a student too. So that was part of the process as well. I even made a video to show what my studio looked like, and I'm really kind of like in a corner in my studio at home, and I showed what the piano looked like and how the camera angle worked, and then where the microphone was. So I did that because a lot of my friends from local piano teachers groups needed some advice as to how to set up their own home studios. Not that I'm an expert, but when you're working on something, you really want to help other people through the process, because it was very demanding, something that I had never done before.
And it sounds like that forced you to be creative in a way that you didn't even realize you could.
That's right.
And allowed you to continue to share your gift at a time when, we're focusing on health, and trying to keep people safe. And I know, to segue to your research, you also want to keep people healthy and safe in that. And I'd love for you to talk about a very interesting area of research that you're doing.
Yes, it started, my interest started when I was in graduate school, because I was majoring in theory and I had to take a couple semesters of piano as part of my degree. And I was studying with a teacher who had studied with Dorothy Taubman in New York, who had developed and been in the process of developing a way of approaching the piano in a very healthy way. So it pretty much all boils down to correct position and correct movement. And what correct boils down to is actually the most natural position that your hand can be, which is like when your hand is hanging at your side, you just bring your hand up to the piano and there it is, that's your position. And then how are you going to move? And what had happened to me in undergrad school is that I didn't have this kind of guidance, and I developed tendonitis in my right thumb, and so I thought, well, I don't really have much of a career as a pianist, so I'll just study theory, which I loved anyway. So that turned into something completely different, and I was so excited about finding out that there was a way that I could study, or teachers that I could study with, that would actually help me correct what I was doing incorrectly at the piano that could have destroyed my, my career as a pianist.
What an amazing story and an area to go into, honestly, because when you think about what musicians give and the repetitive motion, if you're not doing it right, you, again, may say, well, this is not for me, I just wasn't cut out to do this, when really some simple adjustments could make all the difference. And it sounds like that's what you found.
I did, and I can't take credit for it. Obviously, it was passed down to me amongst other people too. But I continue to learn. There's another group that I've joined, which is a group of pianists that had also studied with Dorothy Taubman and some of her students, and this is called the Well Balanced Pianist Teacher Training Program. And they are incorporating yoga and understanding of Feldenkrais, so that we're moving in a way that is what they call minimal muscular engagement, so that instead of moving your fingers a lot like this, or your body a lot with a lot of tension, you're working towards having much more freedom and, as I said, minimal amount of movement for the maximum result.
Oh, well, I can't believe we have to go to another break. This is so interesting, but stay tuned. We're going to be right back, and you're going to hear more about Linette Popoff-Parks, and you're even going to see a special performance she did for us. Stay tuned.
Kickflip 6 stairs takes determination. So will getting into college. I've got what it takes. So do you.
So, are you going out tonight?
I can't. My parents say I have to be home right after work.
That's so gay.
Totally gay.
Ugh, that is so Emma and Julia.
Why are you saying that's so Emma and Julia?
Well, when something is dumb or stupid, you say that's so Emma and Julia.
Who says that?
Everyone.
Imagine if who you are were used as an insult. When you say that's so gay, do you realize what you say? Knock it off.
Marie, you have prediabetes.
Prediabetes? I don't have time to eat right or exercise. I'm a busy mom.
Oh, you're a busy mom.
Yeah.
This is great news. Busy moms never get prediabetes.
Wait, what?
Let me just... Yeah, this is all the people at risk for prediabetes, and way over here, busy moms. No?
Whew. What to expect when you're expecting.
Like here.
A teenager.
Today, I'm going to show you how to team-proof your home. First step, hide the car keys. Preferably somewhere they would never look. Challenges will come up. Be ready for them. Hi, honey.
Ready for the... Mom, you don't use mannequins in the mannequin challenge.
You don't have to know it all to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same.
Welcome back to Celebrate Michigan. I'm Chris Benson. We're in the studio today with Linette Popoff-Parks to talk about how you can get involved with piano. And then a little later, just a few minutes actually, she was kind enough to offer a special performance of Bach's Prelude in C major, which we're going to be playing just a minute. I can't wait. Why that specific selection for this piece?
I'm so glad you asked that question.
Okay.
You know, one of the things that happened to me during the pandemic, as well as a lot of other musicians, is that the music that I enjoyed playing, I couldn't play. I just couldn't connect with it. It bothered me, and it was such a difficult thing to explain, I just can't even describe it. But I found an interest in Bach's music, which I often liked, but there was something about the way that it spoke to me, and the sense of truth that exists in that music. And sometimes it's the tranquility, sometimes it's what I think is the way that Bach can speak to you, if you kind of know what I mean.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, one of my students was the same way. She said, I can only play Bach, I can't play anything else right now. And then there were a lot of performing musicians who were doing live streaming from their homes, their basements, playing Bach. Oh. So there was something about the connection between musicians and the distress and Bach's music that was not just calming, but somehow it was able to help us to connect to the feelings that we had.
Wow. Well, I know we're going to take a look at this right now, and I look forward to connecting with that, and we'll show that now for our audience. Ooh, well, what do you feel now as you're watching that? It's got to be an interesting experience watching yourself play, but what did you feel as you heard that and watched yourself?
Well, it's kind of a combination of the reaction of the music itself, and then wishing that I had had a little bit more variation in dynamics, but pleased that that my technical approach of the piano was solid enough that I could get from the instrument what I wanted. Then I was also really impressed with the work that the crew did with all the different camera angles and the editing, and yeah,
it was beautiful.
There's no way that I could watch that without appreciating that element.
The emotion I can see, not, again, I'm not a practicing musician, but I could feel the emotion in that, and I can see why people would feel connected to that music during the pandemic. It's just the sound of my soul.
Yeah.
Like, the ups and the downs and everything we've been through. Whew.
I think that's a really good description. I like that.
It's how I felt. So how could people find you if they're interested in getting in touch with you and learning more about, music or connecting with you to get some instruction?
Well, I have a website, Linette Popoff-Parks.com, and on there you'll find a little bit about me, my background, my teaching background, my specific interests, in addition to working with pianists with small hands and pianists with injuries. And then I'm also still here at Madonna, so people can write to me at Madonna.
Thank you so much for sharing your musical gifts, inspiration, talent, and your research with us today. I'm sure that many people who were watching were inspired.
Well, thank you. Thanks a lot, Chris.
Well, and unfortunately, this part of our show has come to an end. It happened so fast. We are so appreciative to Professor Linette Popoff-Parks for telling us about herself and just sharing her beautiful work with us today. I know it moved you just as much as it moved me. And thank you for staying with us here at Celebrate Michigan, where we celebrate all the great things happening in the Mitten State. It's an honor to present to you this professor and everything that she's done, and we can't wait to see you next time on the show. Take care.